Alright guys, big, huge video coming at you now. Revelation WoW just did their developer Q&A. It was a live stream. Now the live stream itself was 2.5 hours long roughly. I took a bunch of notes of what they went through, what they discussed, some of the Q&A at the end, and I kind of compiled it all to a shorter version for you, though it's going to be pretty lengthy for me, you know what I mean? Now, the footage you're going to see here is going to be from the live stream itself mostly, and I'm going to apologize for the quality. It was not me, it was actually the stream itself. I got to work with what I got, and they were even aware that the stream quality was not that good, but sometimes Discord does that to you. It's happened to me before. Anyway, if you see other footage, it might be footage from when I used to play back on the beta a couple years ago, just to fill in the gaps a little bit here and there, but otherwise you should be seeing footage from the stream itself. Alright, first things first. New character models. We've talked about this before, you've seen it in the game, but for those of you who did not know, they are going to be using the new character models from retail, and that's also going to include the new customization options that you see in Dragonflight, from different colored skins such as having Druid of the Flame to Chaos Orcs, all that fun stuff. You can choose when you go to the character screen, Horde or Alliance when you're creating your character. There's also a neutral option for the Murloc and Tuskar, but they will eventually have to choose whether they're Horde or Alliance. They can't stay true neutrals. You can also see on the character creation screen that you can now create the Necromancer class, which is only available for humans and undead. They will have a lore reason behind that, but for now, no, you can only be it if you are a human or undead, and we're going to talk more about Necromancer later on. In the customer creation screen, they are also going to have new backgrounds soon to be custom to the server itself, but they are not done yet, so you will not see them here. They did confirm that player housing is going to be in the game, and they even showcased it later on, so we'll get to that when we get to that. When you create your new character, you do have the option to start in the brand new custom starting zone, which they had one originally that was mandatory, and I didn't like that at all. That was one of my criticisms. A lot of people had criticisms about it, but now I don't know if they've retained that somewhere else in the game, but their brand new custom starting zone is up and running, and it will be optional, or you could just start in the racial starting zone like normal. You can also return to the custom zone anytime you wish by talking to an NPC in the racial starting zone. They talked about how the client as of right now is down to 25 gigabytes when it used to be like 60 or something. It was very strong. But they also said because of that, there's a lot of textures missing, a lot of popping in and out of various items and textures, and that's just because they had to purge a lot of memory from the client itself, though they said it will be fixed by the time we get to play it. So a lot of what you see here, if it's a little bit popping in and out, textures missing, it will be fixed by the time we get to play it. So they said because of that, it might add a little bit of more memory to the 25 that they're at now, but they said they're probably going to cap it out at 32 gigabyte download. As of right now, there are new skyboxes in the various old world zones. Now, some of them are placeholder. They do plan on changing some of them later on to fit more with the theme and style of the various zones, but you could tell that they are the more hand-drawn clouds and sky boxes that you would see typically in a newer zone. It started from Mists of Pandaria and onward, but you could see that here definitely. They said the level 1 to 20 zones are done, though some areas are being tweaked and changed here and there. From new secret areas that have items to find, even profession-only areas to unlock, such as the caves from Legion, where you can unlock them by unblocking it with a pickaxe, if you're a miner that is, and some various other hidden areas that you can discover. Speaking of discovery, they said no more invisible walls for unfinished zones, So if you played in the original beta, if you tried going into Stone Talon, for example, you would be teleported back out because it was in an unfinished zone, and that locked pretty much the entire game out from players being able to interact with each other, especially from the Horde and Alliance perspective. That is no longer the case. You can go into an unfinished zone if it's still not complete during the beta, just so you can explore it as is, though do remember it will be unfinished, so anything you see that is not intended to be played at will be changed before the actual launch. Various events like the Dark Moon Fair have been moved due to the various additions in the zones themselves. For an example, in Mulgore, that is where the Horde's Dark Moon Fair is. That whole area where it used to be is extended out from Thunderbluff because Thunderbluff had been changed so drastically. So, Dark Moon Fair was changed more closer to Bloodhoof Village where it can fit properly. And all of the other holiday events will be like this as well. So there are a lot of new custom maps in the game. A lot of them are done from the Incarnate website, which I can visually tell that it is from Incarnate. They are still quite nice and different from any other maps that we've seen from other servers. Though that being said, a lot of them are still unfinished or placeholder, and that they will be updating some of them as they progress in development. As they started moving more into the zones, one of the new models that we see are dragon models. Now, I'm not sure if it's a dragon flight model, but they said that they were enhanced or altered to be a little bit more ferocious looking. I can't quite remember what Rex said, and we couldn't quite see what the dragons looked like because we didn't get an up close shot, but he said that a lot of these models are updated visually as well. Whether they're custom or brought over from retail, I'm not quite sure. Though, going more in-depth in the zones, they started off with Thousand Needles, which looks like a mix of Blade's Edge Mountains and Dragonblight. There's going to be a maze-like area that you're going to have to go through, and it's all very cold and snowy with a lot of kobolds everywhere. Then, as you notice as he pulls up the map, you see a lava area, but it's not just really a lava area. As you go to that area, which used to be the Shimmering Flats, you see that it was actually an explosion from the nearby goblins of the city of Rocket-Zahn. So we've talked about Rocket-Zahn in the past. I wasn't quite sure where it was. Now we know. It is right in the heart of Shimmering Flats where the raceway used to be. Half of it got blown to smithereens, and that's why a lot of it is fire and red, but where it was not affected by the explosions due to the goblins is very foresty and green. And as he pulls up the map, you can also tell that the area where the Wind Riders were in the northwestern part of Thousand Needles, that area is also very bright and green, though we didn't quite see it, so I'm not sure how it looks up close. Now, the city of Rocket-Zahn itself is going to be hostile to the players until they complete a couple of quests, which will bring up your reputation with them for them to become friendly with the player. And this city is going to be an endgame level 60 city, with plenty of quests that will take place within the city itself. The next zone that they talked about is Stone Talon Mountains. It's got a bit of Grizzly Hills, as well as a Crystal Song Forest vibe going on there. It's primarily going to have a Horde and Alliance storyline setup, with various areas of conflict between the Night Elves and the Orcs, though the Orcs have the upper hand in this area. They showed off a destroyed Dark Portal at one part, which is going to be another story to get involved in, and they showed off rare, I guess they were PvP or PvE, mini bosses or rares or something that you can kill or do quests with for the Horde and Alliance storyline. They also showed off a lore character, Brawl Bearmantle, who's sitting there next to the destroyed Dark Portal. Now, moving over to Ashenvale, the Horde and Alliance are also fighting there, however, it is Night Elf controlled instead of Horde controlled. There's going to be a large section within Ashenvale Forest called the Forbidden Forest, which is going to be the primary PvP zone. There's also some questing involved as well, revolving Twilight Cult and Old Gods. There's going to be a dragon in the middle of the Forbidden Forest as well. We're not sure who it is. He didn't really show us the nameplate, but judging by the model, it looks like Nozdormu, but it was a green dragon, so I'm not sure who this dragon is. And of course, on the eastern side of the zone where the demon stuff used to be, near the Manoroth Coven or whatever it was called, I forgot. You know, where Grom fought Manoroth. That stuff is all legioned out. Demon stuff everywhere. But that's just a foothold. The demons themselves are coming from Azshara, which is going to have more of a Shadow Moon Valley-esque kind of vibe because it is Legion controlled. It is also going to be an endgame zone. Speaking of endgame zones, they showed off they told us about Teneris, which Teneris is going to be a level 60 elite zone for endgame, obviously. It's not going to be the desert that we know and love. They've already showed off a couple of screenshots, and it looks more foresty than it does desert. I'm not sure about Uldum. They talked a little bit about Uldum, but we didn't get to see anything of it. They talked a little bit about Feralis, which is going to have 2 various subzones, just like how the Barrens has the Valley of Life area, and then below, in the southern area, it's more death and destruction. Dostwell Marsh also got an upgrade. It looks more closely to the Northern Barrens with the wild cherry blossoms and stuff, but there's also a lot of bamboo forest reminiscent of the Jade Forest from Pandaria. It still has the dragons that we all know and love. Anixia is still there with her brood, but also the ogres have an upgrade. They're going to be more like ogres from Warlords of Draenor High Mall, with all of the same aesthetics and models. They are also going to be smarter than the average ogre. They said it's only going to be a storyline with these ogres specifically, as other ogres in the game are still going to be the me-smash dumbasses that we all know and love. They showed off a tiny bit of Tirisfal with the starting zone for the Necromancer called Vandermar Village, which is going to be a phased starting zone because it takes place during the Third War during the Scourge invasion. Now, they flew by through Tirisfal and Silverpine. We did see that Gilneas is open. They did say that Gilneas will be available, but we don't know what's inside of it just yet, other than there's going to be Worgen stuff going on. Hillsbrad is Forsaken controlled, and the storyline revolving Hillsbrad is going to be a civil war within the Forsaken themselves, because, if you remember from the beta, Sylvanas is not the leader of the Forsaken. Now, I'll be honest, I actually do not remember who the leader was, but I guess that's fine because that would have been a spoiler for anyone else. It's probably in my Tirisfal video from a year ago, but I'm not going to go back and watch it. Anyway, so the Civil War is between those who follow their new leader, or current leader rather, and what path they want to take. Do they want to try to retain their humanity, or go more of the we're gonna plague everything kind of storyline? Though in the northwestern corner, you will notice that Dalaran is where it's supposed to be. It is not a crater, and it is a full-on city that you can go inside of and walk around. Though it was empty. At first I thought it was just an unfinished zone with no NPCs in it, but they said that is intentional. There is a storyline revolving around why there's no one in the city, so we'll have to figure that out later on. They didn't really show off Arathi because Arathi is unfinished. However, they did show off a little bit of Stormguard. Stormguard is alive and well, and you can visit it. They did make note of all of the massive changes, at least the more unusual changes to the world, is going to be in the center of Kalimdor for a specific reason, which is unknown as of right now because of lore spoilers. Flying south through Eastern Kingdoms, they stopped at the wetlands just to show us that they have a Shrek reference in there, which I thought pretty funny. All the way in the southern end of Eastern Kingdoms, they showed off a little bit of Stranglethorn Vale, which is going to be a full-on troll empire. But not just that, you're going to have the Gurabashi in the south, and in the north, you're going to have the Drakari. Or at least what appear to be Drakari. They said that that's going to be another storyline that is going to be revealed through the gameplay, We don't know much about it yet, but it looks a lot like Zuldrak slash Zuldazar in the various areas. Zuldazar being the more Gurabashi area with the Aztec theme, while Zuldrak is in the northern theme. They said Deadwind Gorge is going to get an overhaul as well, though it has not as of right now, and more to come later on. However, Karazhan will remain where it is. The last area that they showed off is Duskwood. They first showed off Darkshire, which is not really as dark. It's actually pretty beautiful. It's got a nice waterfall and such, and it's a little bit bright out. However, as you step outside, it gets a lot darker within the rest of the forest. Not only that, there's a huge plagued lake, just green ooze nastiness. They did explain why. I'm not really sure I buy the story, but okay, we'll go with it. But anyway, giant undead ooze pool in the center of it. You have a Scourge that is rampant throughout the zone, as well as a safe haven that the humans have developed in a hidden area up in the mountains. And the last thing that they showed off was up where the Emerald Dream portal used to be. It is now a broken portal because it looks like some of the nightmare has seeped through. You can see remnants of the nightmare everywhere. So the portal had to shut down in order to prevent the spread. Now, that was all of the zones. After that, they talked a lot about systems and various UI elements. First of all was the collections tab, which all of your collections are going to be account-wide. Once you collect it on a single character, any of your characters can use it if they have the level requirement. But in order to acquire some of the items, such as mounts, they will be race or faction specific. Now, I'm not sure if I could get a horse on a human and then use it on an orc character. They didn't really say much on how that was going to work in terms of the account-wide stuff. However, if it's a Tauren mount on an orc, as long as he's the correct level to ride the mount, he will be able to use it. Now, transmog is a work in progress as of right now, but it's pretty much just like retail. You have to use the item in order to learn it, and once you learn it, you can just equip it by talking to an NPC, and your character will be transmogged to the item that you want. Pretty much just like retail. On that note, they did say that pretty much every single item that you can acquire in-game normally will be found in the game itself and not on the shop. If you ever did see a shop item to purchase with real money, it would be something that you could not usually acquire in-game. It would be usually handcrafted, or somebody got commissioned to make something. Either way, it would not be a normal item. They talked about a little bit how GMs will be controlling people who multi-box and RMT, which means no multi-boxing. However, you can have multiple accounts and multiple characters. You just cannot have them all running on the same time with that program, you know, that controls all the bots. Obviously, no botting and no real money trading. Going back a little bit to the transmog and customization options, druids will have various druid forms that you can choose between. So you can choose whatever model you want. They even said that you will have a wolf model as your cat form if you wanted it to be. And all of the new shapes will be available in-game and not on the shop. They went through an entire segment on the new racials. As I talked about in my last video, there's gonna be like, 50 plus racials that you're gonna be able to choose from. I'm not really sure how they're racials at that point. You just pick a starter spell or have another name for it because it's not really a racial at that point. But either way, I'm not gonna go through the whole spiel on the racials because there was a lot of numbers and technical talk that I kind of went over my head. If you wanted to know more about it, maybe I'll do a dedicated video to the racials later on, but for now, know that they did talk about how a lot of them are going to be unique abilities. Some of them will be different than others or similar in order to give you more variety, so you don't have to feel like you have to pick one because that's the optimal one. They then talked about mounts. Mounts, well, while there will be the normal level 40 and level 60 mounts that just go 60% and 100% speed, there will be mounts that have both pros and cons to them, depending on the type of mount it is. For example, there will be horses that are faster, but you can get dismounted easier off of them. You have the brutal mounts, which are like PvP mounts, which can AoE down enemies as you stomp through them, and so on. They gave a few other examples, just like the saber mounts, the night elf cat saber mounts, that will be a little bit slower than a horse. However, they can track enemies just like a hunter can use tracking systems. Some of them will have water walking, some of them can glide in the air, and others, like Elix, will have a high defense rating, so you will take less damage while mounted on the Elix. They also talked a little bit about lumbering mounts, which is another type of mount for specific builds and such, I believe, but they will be combat mounts. However, they will be not really used for travel. Some mounts can even be used in caves, while others cannot, and some of them are limited to specific zones. They then talked about sub-factions. We talked about this in my last video. They're basically just like the faction system from Skyrim and Morrowind. Some of them will be for PvE, some of them will be for PvP, or both. They will offer the player new quests, they will offer them bounties for other players, unlock specific areas, even events. The example that was given was if you joined one faction and the other one does not like you, they will spawn in randomized mercenaries to try to hunt you down for your bounty, and that's the PvE aspect. A player could also get a bounty to hunt you for the PvP aspect. One of the factions that they talked about was one that would allow you to have Cavalier for mounts, and it would specialize you in your mount, and that would allow you to do mounted combat, and as well as other perks for being a mounted Cavalier person. They are reworking the professions in terms of specialization. The example that they give was blacksmithing. Now, blacksmithing, we all know how you can go into armorsmith and weaponsmith. You can still do that, as well as a third option, which is player housing. And then beyond that, they will expand off into 2 more specializations for each of the 3 that I give you. So for each of the 3, which is again the weapons, armor, and player housing, you can then specialize one more time into either BOE or BOP. If you specialize into BOE items that you can trade off to other players, that would be a way to get money on the auction house because you would be able to trade other players. However, the value would not be as much as the BOP. If you make the soulbound items instead, the quality of the item will be much greater than the bind on equipped item. However, it is soulbound, so you will only be able to use it and no one else. They did say that this is going to be locked. Once you choose your specialization, there is no going back unless you completely get rid of your profession and re-level it. They even made mention that the soulbound specialization for the armor and weapons and such would eventually allow you to get raid quality gear, though it will take some time in order for you to get to that level. But they were trying to go for, if you wanted to get full raid gear without raiding, it will be possible, but it's not the optimal route, as it will again take you maybe months to acquire all of the gear instead of just raiding a couple of weeks and getting it that way. They talked a little bit about PvP zones, and it reminded me a lot of this one area in Legion. I can't quite remember where, like, what it was or what it was called or whatever, but I remember there was a world quest for PvP back in Legion where you would have to do various tasks within the zone, and by doing the various tasks, killing the NPCs within the area and killing the players within the area, you would acquire points. And if a player killed you, all of your points would go to them. That's basically how they're planning to build their PvP zones. And then if you go and turn in your points or leave the area, that's what you would leave with. However, the longer the stay, the higher the risk, but the better the reward, because you will be killing more enemies. So they're going to be playing around with that type of system. However, like I said, we have seen it before in-game in the retail version back in Legion, so it's nothing really that out of the box. Alright, now for player housing. Player housing is going to require professional people, as in, professions, in order to help build all of your various, furniture and such. You're going to need tailors, you're going to need lumberjacks, you're going to need... Oh, by the way, lumberjack is going to be a type of profession to cut down lumber and stuff. You're going to need blacksmiths, all that kind of stuff in order to get the BOE items to purchase in order to furnish your house. Or, like I said earlier, you can go the soulbound route to make the items specifically for yourself and completely furnish your own house with your professional. Now, I'm not sure if all of the zones will have this, but a lot of the zones, I will say, will have designated areas for in-world player housing. It will be one large plot, and depending on how much gold you have, you will be able to buy as much land as you can with the gold that you have. So the more gold you have, the more land you can buy. It could even get to a point where a single player could buy the entire plot if they had enough money to. That's basically what they said. Some people will have a small plot, some people will have a larger plot. Again, it depends on how much gold you have. But within the specific spot that you purchase, you will be able to add your own house, add NPCs, add decoration, all various types of customization that you can do. You can even change it later on. Though with that being said, while it will stay in the world even if you are logged off, if you stay logged off for too long, eventually you will lose your house, but it's not going to be right away. They're going to implement a monthly tax system, so you will have to pay for your house every month in order to keep it. Now, that was confirmed for the in-world housing on those plots that I told you about, but they also said that for the more casual player who might not have as much money, there will be an apartment system. Some apartments will be basic, some of them will be more luxurious, but it will be instanced rather than in-world. Therefore, anyone can have an apartment, and there will be as many as needed. Though, being that it is an apartment, you will not be able to decorate your yard, as you will not have a yard. Think of it in real-life terms. If you're in an apartment, you don't exactly have a farm outside. So, you will only be able to decorate the inside. They did say also with the apartment system that they're going to be limiting how many people can visit you. Like, you're not going to be able to have visitors. I think that's kind of shitty. They should make it so your friends can come and visit your apartment, just as they would if you had a house plot. But I expect them to change that later on. They did also mention guild housing, or guild halls, or whatever you want to call them, might make it in the future, but as of right now, they are not planned, though they can come in later on. The last thing that they talked about, just for the general showcase before they went into the Q&A, was the fact that the Necromancer class was built two different ways, with two different play styles. So what they want to do is, during the next test, or a specific test where they bring in, certain people, they will allow them to play both types of the Necromancers that they've made, and the players will be able to vote on which playstyle they like the most. Whatever they like the most, that's the one that will be making it into the live version. They made mention of it being a more World of Warcraft-esque type of build versus an EverQuest Necromancer type of build. So you'll be able to play the WoW version and the Everlook version, and whatever one players like better, they can vote on. And then finally, they ended up this video with a Q&A. Now, some of the questions were questions that were from answers that they already discussed in the video itself, so I skipped those and only kept this to the questions that were new. The first one was about GDKP, and whether we would be able to do that at all. They said they're unsure at the moment, though hesitant. They are absolutely not allowing botting or real money trading. However, if a guild wanted to do a GDKP, as of right now they're unsure, but it's not a definite no or a yes just yet. The next question was about the talent system. So the talent system has been up and down through many hoops since the betas, and they finally settled on having a modified Wrath of the Lich King talent system. The layout itself is completely different, and there will be new spells added. However, the majority of the spells within the talent system themselves are going to be the Wrath of the Lich King ones. The next question was legendary weapons, if we're going to have them, or if we're going to be able to get a legendary weapon from the lore, or if they're all just going to be lost to, questing or time, just like Ashbringer or Doomhammer or stuff like that. They said you will be able to obtain some legendary weapons within the server. However, some of the lore weapons will remain lost to time. So don't expect Doomhammer. Somebody asked if they planned on implementing new classes beyond the Necromancer. They said only if it makes sense for the lore, and it's not likely until they decide to delve into the Burning Crusade expansion later on, way after launch. As a hunter myself, I had to include this question. Somebody asked if the dead zone will remain for the hunter, and they said, as of right now, it's gonna stay how it is in terms of Wrath of the Lich King client, which it's only like 5 meters or so. It's really not that bad. Playing on a Wrath of the Lich King server, I don't notice the dead zone at all, but it does exist. They said if players ask for it, they would remove it, so there's that. If you're a hunter, you don't like the dead zone at all, message them, let them know that you don't want it, and they will remove it. The next question, which is kind of important to me, and I'm not sure how I feel about this answer, but they were asked about the quest flow. How will the questing work? Will it be more vanilla-like, or will it be more Cataclysm-like in terms of the linearity and stuff? They said that they want to go more of the Cataclysm approach with that linearity, and I'm not sure if I'm agreeing with that much, but he only said Cataclysm approach, and then he said having hubs only give you quests that will retain to the area that it takes place in. So that's not really saying if it's going to be linear or not. It's more of, let's take Gromgall for an example in Stranglethorn Vale. If you picked up quests in Gromgall, they would be within that area instead of sending you down to Booty Bay and back, or all the way to the hinterlands and back and stuff like that, which in that case, if it's, within the area itself, I'll be okay with it. I'm just really against linear storytelling. Like, mandatory linear storytelling is what I'm absolutely against, and that's why I hate the Cataclysm questing approach, but we'll have to really play it to see it. When I last played it, it was pretty much all of the same vanilla questing, just with additional quests, so, that's a wait and see. On the topic of questing, somebody asked if they planned on adding in any of the discontinued quests from vanilla. He said he wasn't sure, but if they made sense for the lore, they would go ahead and implement them in. However, there are no plans as of right now to add any discontinued quests into the game. Somebody then asked if there's going to be a hardcore mode. Now, he talked about how he doesn't really like hardcore mode because it separates the player base from being able to play with each other. It's not really the fact that if you die for good. That's not really the issue that it is. It's more of when you go hardcore, you're not allowed to trade with other players, you're not allowed to group with other players, and that separates the player base, so he doesn't like that. However, he wants to experiment and possibly make a second server for this experiment later on that will, instead of having a hardcore mode, be a survival mode, where he will turn the game into a survival game where you're going to have to eat, you're going to have to drink, all that kind of stuff, just like a survival game, and I am all for that. If anyone have watched my my streams, I've talked about if I ever wanted to make my own World of Warcraft or just Warcraft themed game, I would make it an open world survival game. Go full out survival game, because that's the kind of shit that I like to play. Now, I don't think Rekt is going to go with my vision of how I would want it to be, because he's got his own mentality, but I am still very much interested in seeing a survival mode for World of Warcraft. We already saw a taste of it back in Legion. There was an entire hunter questline with Rexxar up in the High Mountain area where he made you survive the night. When it was dark, you had to go hunting, you had to cook your food, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was absolutely fun, and that was just a small little single quest, you know, a taste of it. I would love that expanded upon and turned into a survival mode. You know, wearing warm clothes for a cold area, getting something to help you with the heat for hot areas, make it full-on RPG, adding Monster Hunter elements, adding Conan Exiles elements, all that kind of stuff, but that's just my wishful thinking. We'll have to wait and see. And the final thing that I'm going to end this long video on is, when is the beta? They said the next beta will be coming when the launcher is complete. Now, here's the thing. We don't know how far along the launcher is until it's, you know, done. So, really, that means no ETA as of right now. But we do know when the launcher is completed and ready to go, they said roughly a week or two after it's done will the next beta happen. So that's always exciting. Now, again, this was a shortened, condensed version of what they went through in their 2.5 hour long, you know, video. I condensed it down for you a little bit, even though it's still a long video on my end. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please like the video. Subscribe if you want to see more Revelation WoW or any other private server news, coverage, gameplay. I'm going in. I'm going to have fun. I'll meet you in the game when it comes time, and I'll see you later.
Okay, where the hell did it plug?